All right, all. So I'm going to show you guys, we talked about animation a couple of modules ago. And I'm just going to show you how we can kind of use that with the interactions that we can do. So in your scripts, I have a script I already made for you, and it's called Animation Cube. Okay. And so I've actually already made some animations. I stored them in here. So I have a animation called Cube Grow, where it basically kind of pulsates. And I have a cube spin where the cube will spin. Okay. And I'm not going to go through how to do those. If you want to go back a couple modules ago, we talked about how to make animations either in Unity or you can import them from, Blender or something like that. So we have these are animations and they dot end in a dot anim, but we also have an animator, which I already have. Okay. And if I double click on the animator, you can see that these are the two animations. And then I also made one from scratch. The way I did that was essentially making a new state from scratch called empty. And I'm going to call this default. If you want this to work, you have to spell it with capital D because that's what I use in my code. And so I'm going to set this as the default. So in other words, what this means is essentially when the world starts, it's starting off in default mode, which the cube does nothing in default mode. Okay. And what I'm going to do, so you should already have the animator with the cube on it. I already have an interactable here. Well, I'll take that off, but let me show you what we're going to do. So here I have this I have this script that I wrote. And what it's doing is it's making a new variable, and the type of variable it's making is an animator variable. Okay. The name of the variable is called anim, or however you pronounce that. You can change that. You can call it my_anima or whatever you want to call it. And then what we're doing is as soon as the game loads or the world loads, it's going to take this and fill it with the animator component. So what that's going to do is grab this and all the information related to it, which is the cube. Okay. Then what I did is I made my own functions from scratch. And it was very important that I call them public. Public allows it to be called within Unity. If it's private or you don't set anything, you wouldn't be able to reference them. And what they do is they're just basically little functions I created. Also, they have to start with a capital letter. It's just kind of a rule of Unity. What they're basically doing is we're telling the object that we created to play a particular animation that we've made. So you'll notice this one plays the animation cube grow, this one plays the animation cube spin, and this one actually calls on that default state that we created. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and let's add this script to my cube. And I'm going to go and let's add an XR interactable, like a simple interactable. Okay. And let's set the interaction to everything. And then what I'm going to do is let's set a hover. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to set it that when we hover, I want it to do let's do the cube spin. So the script is applied to the cube. So I'm going to drag the cube in here. That gives me access to any scripts that are on the cube. And the script that we're grabbing is animator, or sorry, animation cube. And then I'm going to grab spin. Okay. And so what that's going to do is turn on the animation, the spin animation that I created when we hover on it. Okay. Now what I want to do is when we stop hovering, I want it to go back to the default state. So on hover exited, let's set this up. Once again, I'm trying to grab a script that's on my cube. So let's do that. And I'm going to try to run animation cube default. Okay. And so what this should do is when When I hover over this, it'll start the spin animation. And when I stop hovering, it should go back to the default, which means no animation. Okay, now that's for hover. I have another animation where it grows, and I want that to be the trigger, the select, on my cursor here. So what I'm going to do is let's click here and let's add in that cube. And this time we're going to run the grow function when we select. And just like the other one, I also want it to turn off when I stop selecting. So select exit. So let's, once again, I'm going to grab the cube and let's set this to default. Okay. So what's going to happen is when I select, it should start the grow animation. And when I select it again, it should stop it. Okay. Here is this other one. This is actually a model I found on Polypizza, and it has built-in animations. Okay. I want to show you how to do this from scratch in case you find your own. So what I did is, and I'll do this from scratch. When I imported the model, the robot model, the robot actually came with some built-in animations. So if you click on the model under robot, and I unfurl this, you might notice all of these. So these are the animations, okay? Now, what doesn't get brought in is we need to have an animator that we're going to apply to the robot. So I'm going to go in here, right-click, create, and under animation, we're going to make an animation controller. And I'm just going to call it robot. And then I'm going to apply that to the robot. Oops, oh, it's already here. There it is, robot. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is we need to set up the controller in terms of what animations it's going to do. So right now, this is my animator, and I don't really have any animations in here. So what you can actually do is if I go under the robot model, and let's say I wanted to use some of the animations. I think the two I did I'm going to use two of them, one called dance. I'm just going to drag this in, and you can see it says robot armature dance, robot dance. And I'm going to do the one, another one called walking. Okay. And just to make it easier when I call it in my code, I'm going to right click and I'm going to call this dance. And I'm going to call this one walking, I believe. It has to match up to the script I gave you. Oh, sorry. It wasn't walking, it was running. So I'm going to go back and grab the running animation. And I'm just going to relabel this as running, capital. When I use animations, I give them capital names. And then I also want to have that default. So I'm going to go right click, create state, empty. And I'm just going to make a default state called default. And in the code, I make a capital D, so please make it as capital D. And I want that to be the default state of my robot. So I'm going to say set layer as default state. So I have my two animations. You can have more, but I'm only doing a hover and a select. So there's really only two triggers at this case. All right, so let's go back to the scene, and I have the robot. And what I'm going to do is I have the animation, and let's just go over the animation real quick. It's very similar to the other one in that I create a variable called anima, and its variable type is an animator script, and we're grabbing that animator script. And then I have a couple of functions that I built. They're public functions, so I can call them within Unity. And basically what they do is they say, if this function is called to play a particular animation from the controller, and so this is case sensitive. So if that's why I labeled them exactly the way I labeled them here in my animator. Okay. And now that I've done that, I'm going to go back and let's add an XR simple interactor. Set it to everything. And then under hover, when it hovers, I'm going to take the robot and let's run the dance. So animation robot dance. And then when we stop hovering, let's set it back to the default again. So we're going to go to animation robot default. Okay. And under select, when I select it, that's when I wanted to do the running. So when you click on the robot with your trigger, let's run the running animation. And when you stop selecting, let's go back to default. Okay, so I'm going to save this and let's try this. And it should work that, when I hover or select either object, I'm going to be, doing a different animation. Okay, so like I said, you can write your own animations. I've showed you guys how to do that. You can go back to the previous module where I talk about that. Or you can even find models that have animations. Like I said, I found this model with already animations in it. And then I just decided which animations I want to run with, correspond to which, trigger. So, you could have different objects. Different objects could trigger different, animations. So like maybe there's two robots and, maybe one when you hover does the dance and one when you hover does a different animation, it waves or something like that. I don't, just to make it a little more unique or something. Okay. So let's try this and I'll show you what it looks like.
All right, so here, this is exercise 8, and you can see that I have two objects here, two models, a green square and the robot. I have, hover effects here, or, ray interactors. When I put my cursor here, you can see that it, is running the spin animation, and I pull it away. I stopped hovering, it stops the spin animation. When I do the robot, it begins to dance and do the robot. Okay. If I were to select by using pulling down the trigger, you can see it's doing this pulsating effect here. And when I do this one and I grab it, you can see it's doing the run cycle there. Okay. So you can see how we can use interactors here to kind of like add a little bit to make them a little bit more interesting when you do interaction. Okay.